You're live, but let's give people a couple minutes to hop on.
Okay. Thanks for joining, folks. We're going to give people some time to jump on here.
Here we go. I think I just got dirt in my eye. Okay. Wow. You want to go ahead and you can start talking?
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, folks, I'm Drew with Gebo'S. Some of you might remember me from the ad videos that I used to do. I did that for a while, and they found somebody better, so I don't do that anymore. We're going to start a new series called Grillmasters. We're going to cook something different each time on a different kind of grill or griddle or something. We're coming to you today from Plainview, this wonderful weather we're having today. If you're going to grill or smoke something outside on a day like today, have a fire extinguisher around. You're probably going to need it. First thing we want to talk about is when you get your grill out for the spring, you want to make sure it's clean, it's operable, check the hopper, make sure it's full of pellets. If you don't keep them covered and it gets snow or something in it or any kind of moisture from the winter time, those pellets will swell and they'll plug up the auger, and then you have to disassemble the entire thing to get it to work again. Been there, done that. You don't want to do that. So if you don't have a grill cover, I recommend you buying one and putting over it. Otherwise, you can just dump all the pellets out in the fall when you're done. If you're not going to grill in the winter, and then fill it back up in the spring. So we got our hopper full. We heated the grill up, cleaned the grates off, and then we went through like a burn-off process this morning. Got it up to about 450, 500 degrees, and let it burn all that stuff off from last year. You can clean it with soap and water if you like. I don't prefer doing that because I like the seasoned flavor that the grill has. A lot of people that have been grilling their entire lives are against pellet grills and pellet smokers. I was reluctant at first, but they're pretty easy to operate. Anybody can do it, and the meat tastes just as good. So to get started, we're going to cook some pork chops today. On the newer grills, newer pellet grills, all pellet grills have a firebox in the bottom of them. Pellets feed out of the hopper. There's a probe that gets hot, and it heats those up and ignites, creates a fire, a little bitty pot, and there's a fan under there that feeds that fire air to keep it going. And above that is a diffuser that spreads the heat out. Well, the new grills have what's called a sear feature or sear function, and there's grooves cut into that diffuser where if you're cooking a steak or a pork chop or chicken leg, something like that, you can open that grate up and utilize that sear function like what we're going to do with the pork chops. We're going to throw them on there and we're going to sear them, and then we're going to close that, spread them out, close the lid, and let them smoke for a little while. These pork chops actually came were raised on my farm, and we used Lopez Meat Market in Littleville, Texas. He's our butcher, so shout out to him. And again, you can see the grooves there, and the fire comes up through those, and we use that to sear. And once we get a good sear on them, then we'll just move them to the side and let them smoke for a little while. Looks like we can get about 4 on there at a time doing that. And everybody likes pork fat.
What have you seasoned these with?
Suckle Busters. Suckle Busters is it's distributed from Coppell, Texas. We carry several. Gebo'S has several different varieties of it. This is just the all-around barbecue rub. It's good for chicken, pork, beef, whatever. They actually have a salt, pepper, garlic, which is real famous for people cooking briskets and whatnot. And later on, we're going to sauce up with some Croy Valley sauce on about half of these.
So how do I know when they're well seared? Just
They won't stick anymore.
good
So see,
tip.
they're still sticking a little bit, and that goes for chicken, steak, whatever. When you're grilling something hot and fast, you don't want to mess with it. You want to mess with it as little as possible. So you don't want to sit there and flip it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Why not?
Because it makes your grill lines ugly.
Oh.
We want pretty.
And it's
grill
all
lines.
about pretty grill lines.
Pretty grill lines. You know the heat's moving through with pork because you can look on the bone. These are bone-in pork chops. You can see the blood start to flow through the top, so you know the heat's kind of rising up through the chops. See how they're still kind of stuck a little bit? That one's free. See, we got a sear on it, so we'll turn it, sear the other side.
Is the
What
back of the
that
grill
does-
hotter?
What that does is that locks in the juices in the pork chop. Steaks are the same way. See our grill lines? If we'd been jacking with it, our grill lines wouldn't be pretty.
I always go for a crosshatch, like a peanut butter cookie. Now, why is the front left one taking a little bit longer? Was it thicker or just where it's
I think
located?
it's just where it's at.
Okay. Oh, there it goes.
Searing meat on the grill is just like you do at home if you're going to cook a roast or something, you know. Your mom always gets out this giant cast iron pan and she puts it in a really hot pan and sears all sides of it before she puts it in the crock pot and cooks it all night. Same concept. Kind of creates a seal around the outside of the meat so it locks in the juices. If you slow cook something without searing it, then sometimes it tends to dry out. A lot of people with steaks nowadays, though, are doing what's called a reverse sear, where they'll put them on the smoker and smoke them, and then take them off the smoker when they're about halfway through cooking process and put them in a hot skillet. So steak's a little bit different animal when it comes to cooking.
Now, does searing also lock in your seasoning a little bit better or not?
Because it doesn't leak a lot of juices out. And when you leak juices out with meat, obviously the spices and rub are going to fall off with it.
We have backup.
We have a fire extinguisher on location,
We do have one on location,
and we need it.
just in case.
So, Drew, while they're working, we've got some other events for Grillmasters scheduled. Not only are you going to do pork chops, we've talked about briskets and burgers
Yeah.
for National Beef Burger Day and National Brisket Day. There is a National Biscuit Day too. We haven't done that. We're also doing fajitas and flour tortillas coming in the fall. What were some other things? We were going to do a cobbler on the pellet grill.
Pizza.
Yes, for National Sausage Pizza Day.
One thing that might be interesting since burgers and brisket are together, maybe we could grind some brisket, turn that into burgers. I've done that at home before.
Oh,
And that's really pretty good.
and you said you got the pork chops are from pigs grown on your farm,
Yep.
and who butchered them and cut them up. I don't know what it's called.
Lopez Meat Market.
Lopez
So we
Meat-
deliver them to him. He's the butcher in Lane County.
Yep,
And
and he's
he does the
at
whole process.
and he's
Yeah.
at a Littlefield if
Littlefield.
if somebody wanted to to get some of your pork chops in the less seasoned state if they wanted to do this at home.
Yeah.
So,
You can see the flames coming up on that sear. So if we close that off, that goes away.
okay, and you closed it off on this grill just by
Yep.
pushing in.
And again, that's kind of a new feature that a lot of the pellet grill people started, because when pellet grills first came out, the problem was it was all about slow cooking. You couldn't get them up to temperature to cook like a steak. You don't want to cook a steak at 250 degrees for 4 hours. Steaks need to be cooked hot and fast, typically, right? So people started complaining about pellet grills not having an option to sear. So the engineers in their infinite wisdom, you know, they came up with this grand plan of how do we make a pellet grill that we can sear with. So it's pretty smart, actually. They just figured out a way to open that up right over the fire pot, because that fire that you saw, that's the only fire that's in there. So there's no fire here and no fire here. What happens is that diffuser that's in there just kind of spreads that heat out.
Pellets are in the grill. You can get different seasonings or to smoke it differently. Is that correct?
There's all different flavors of pellets. There's hickory, there's mesquite, there's oak, there's apple, there's cherry. There's several blends. People like blends of pellets. You know, our lawn and garden buyer here, Mike, he really likes a blend. I think it's a bold blend. I'm a plain and simple mesquite guy. I use mesquite pellets for everything I cook. There's probably going to be some people that are going to throw rocks at me about that, but I don't care.
Now, can you honestly tell the difference if I cooked a pork chop with the mesquite and then I cooked it with the apple?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can. You know, a lot of the brisket cooks and big barbecue restaurants use what's called post oak. You know, and there's, when you say stick burner, you mean not a pellet grill, but where they put the wood in, chunks of wood. And post oak is a breed of oak tree, and they cut up the limbs when they're, you know, 4 to 6 inches in diameter. They let those season. What I mean by that is they sit out in the weather for a year or two, and then they throw those on their stick burners. Again, it's the opposite of a pellet grill, but I don't like post oak on. I think it's bitter. It's just it's a personal preference, you know. It's kind of like some people want mustard and some people want mayonnaise on their sandwich. I like mesquite, so, and then I don't have to change my pellets. However, it's really easy on the new pellet grills on the back side of this. So the pellets go in here, you dump them in the hopper, and you just turn it on and it does its thing. If you want to change, there's a little trap door on the back side back there that you can open up, stick a bucket under there, and the pellets will fall right out, and then you can dump whatever flavor you want in there.
How long does a bag of pellets typically, I mean, how many grillings can you get out of?
Rule of thumb, if you're cooking at, you know, 350 degrees, which is hotter than you normally would if you're smoking ribs or brisket or pork butt, but at 300 to 350 degrees, a hopper full of pellets or a bag of pellets will last the same amount of time a bottle of propane would last on a gas grill.
And
obviously that varies with temperature control. The higher it is, the more pellets it's going to feed.
And the propane doesn't add the smoking and the flavoring.
Right.
Now, pellet grills, is it faster, comparable, similar to a propane? Is it about the same amount of time, or is the propane?
Well, now that they have the sear function, it's just as fast.
Okay.
When they first came out, before they had the sear function that we just used on these chops, pellet grills were a little bit slower. They were originally designed for low and slow cooking, which is, to me, is the best kind of barbecue. But you don't always have time for low and slow. You get off work at 5 o'clock and you get home and you do your thing and all your chores and all that. You don't have 4 or 5 hours to cook ribs or whatever. So you fire up, in the past, you fired up the gas grill and use that. Well, now that the pellet grills have the sear function on them, you're able to get home and do that quickly too.
And we walked out here, what'd you walk out about 10 minutes before you put your pork chops on? 10 to get it heated up a little bit so you get a good sear?
What manufacturers won't tell you is with the pellet grills, it's always best to turn them on, set them to smoke, and leave the lid open and leave it at that point for about 10 minutes. And what that does is that allows the air inside the chamber to start heating up and lets the pellets build up in the pot, lets the fire get going. It takes about between 5 and 10 minutes to do that. What could happen is if you turn it on, you leave the lid closed, it can starve for air, wouldn't light up as well, and then you get ash inside that pot. And that's something we're going to talk about as soon as we're done with this, is the ash buildup in the little burner pot. So
Gonna jump to
I prefer to leave the lid open for about 10 minutes. Always turn it on to smoke first. Any brand, whether it's Pit Boss, Traeger, doesn't really matter. Set it to smoke, leave it there for 10 minutes. You'll hear it roar so you can tell that it's burning. Then you can set the temperature knob to whatever you want and shut the lid.
What did you put on the pork chops, the ones that you...
So on half of them I put this garlic and herb Croy Valley sauce. That's a really cool company. Those guys are really neat. They're real passionate about what they do. They love barbecue. They love to talk about barbecue. You know, you can get online and Google that and call them up and talk for hours about ways to cook stuff. They're just, they're fun people.
So,
This particular grill has a temperature probe. A lot of them do. We can actually run 2 here. So I've got it plugged in. I'm going to stick that in one of the pork chops and see where we're at temperature-wise. I'm going to go right in the middle. And that one's coming up right here. You see this number. And with any other meat that you cook, you take it off the grill or out of the oven or however you cooked it, it's gonna rise between 5 and 10 degrees. So if you can hit if you're looking for a 160 degree finish temperature, if you can get it to 150, 155, it'll finish cooking.
now that's different than letting it rest.
Same thing.
Oh, okay. So rest is let it finish cooking
Because
out.
what happens is the last thing you want to do to any kind of piece of meat when you take it off the grill or the smoker or an oven is to take it inside and cut it open. That one's done, so I'm going to move it up here and just let it stay warm.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Because you want to give the proteins in the meat time to kind of recuperate and let it reabsorb that moisture.
Now, is that considered resting if it's sitting up there or not?
No, not really.
It's just when you pull it out.
Yeah, when I close the lid, it's going to be pretty hot.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to sauce these again.
Okay. And what temperature are you looking for again on these pork chops? What about where?
Finish temperature on pork needs to be about 160.
Okay.
Just to keep from, years ago there was, I think it was called like trichinosis or something like that, was a big deal in the pork industry. They have made so many changes on swine farms and in butcher facilities that you really don't have to worry about getting pork done like you used to. You go in fine restaurants and you can order a pork chop or a pork steak, cooked medium or medium rare even, where you cut into it and it's a little pink. Again, the changes that have been made by the USDA on food handling now is, you really don't have to worry about that as much. Where you need to worry about doneness is, like cheaper ground meat, ground turkey, ground pork, ground beef, unless you're buying it from a locker, because a lot of that is the leftover stuff that's trimmed up. Tastes good, but it gets scooped up off the floor and off the work tables, and so there's some extra stuff in there sometimes that needs to be cooked a little more. I think we're just about done with these bad boys.
Okay. And if you don't happen to know grilling temperatures, Gebo'S is coming out with a new grill magnet to go on your grills. Hopefully we'll have them the next time Drew is out here grilling. They're on order right now, and if you're like myself, you don't know how warm a pork chop or a chicken is supposed to get on your grill. It'll be right there on your grill. It'll also have a QR code to get to Drew's tips, recipes, and everything on our website that is currently under construction, and we'll let you know as soon as it gets up. But we figured spring and dirt were in the air, and hopefully people would want to get out and start grilling and cooking their food outside.
Yeah. One last thing I want to mention before we pull them off. With any pellet grill, you're going to turn it off, but it's going to keep running. The fan's going to keep running, the lights are going to stay on, and you're going to think something's wrong, but it's not. What it's doing is, in that fire pot we talked about earlier, it's burning the remainder of the pellets out of there so that they don't just turn into ash and stay there. Because that pellet, that little hopper in the bottom, or pellet pot, whatever it is, needs to stay clean. So about every 4 or 5 cooks with one of these, you need to actually take all the grates out, take the diffuser out, and get a shot back and clean that little pellet pot out. But what it's doing when you turn it off, it stays running, and the fan's running, the fire's still going, and what it'll do is it'll just stop feeding pellets, the probe won't be hot anymore, and it'll burn itself out. And it's kind of a self-cleaning type thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to turn it off. The chops are done. So if I turn this dial all the way to off, you can see the screen display went away, the light's still on, you can still hear the fan, and you can still hear the fire, but it'll basically just put itself out when it's done.
Brandy says a great idea with the internal temp guide. She's been wanting one, so have I, and they're on order right now, and we'll let you know as soon as they hit the stores, just to help you get grilling and make sure your food is, well, if these taste half as good as they smell right now, it's pretty amazing. Now you can tell just from when you move it around and everything that it still needed a little more time.
Yeah,
that one
did a little bit. It was like 148, 150. Okay. So if it rests for a little while, rests for 5 or 10 minutes, it'll get to 158 or 160, which is perfectly fine.
I think that's the hardest part for any grilling is letting it rest is because you got it off the grill and you're like, it's hot and it's sizzling, and you know, we're going to smell amazing for the rest of the day. And then you have to go in and set it down. And
one thing you can do if you're trying to hold meat, whether it be brisket or pork chops or pork butt or ribs or anything, the best place to hold meat is in a cooler. You know, you can wrap it in full, put it in a cooler, throw a towel in there for moisture, and shut the lid, and it'll hold meat for hours and hours and hours, rather than put it in the oven, because you don't want to, you know, keep it from drying out if it's in the cooler, because it's kind of sealed up. Your cooler's going to smell like pork or brisket or whatever for a while, but we hold briskets that way. So
we'll have to show that when we do our burgers and our brisket, because I didn't think about that. But how do you feed a large crowd of hamburgers? You know, without everybody waiting, and
unless you have a giant grill. To cook them on,
well, and then
gotta hold them somewhere.
Then the Grillmaster is always stuck to the grill for hours and hours. So
he gets to eat while he's cooking. So
you taste test, right?
Yeah. So cool. Well, I'm gonna go get a clean pan.
Okay.
Get the chops off, and we're gonna go have some lunch. I don't know about you guys, but thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. I'm sure this video will be up for a while. If you missed the live event today. So.
Questions? Any questions y'all have? Put them in the messages, and I will get them to Drew, who is our resident grill master. We're going to be doing this about once a month, and then we'll have his recipes and what he did put up on the website. As I said, that's under construction along with our magnets, but we just wanted to make this easy for anybody, including me, to get out and grill. So thank y'all for joining in. Again, if you have a question, I can't answer it, but I happen to know an expert that can, and I'll get your answers back to you right away. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.